Glad you're here. Uh, this ought to be fun, or at least interesting. So this is Friday with Fred. Jody will be joining me in just a moment, and we're going to ask. We're going to answer or try to answer your homeschooling, family, parenting, life questions. Jody and I have been married almost 41 years now. We have 5 kids, 11 grandkids. Homeschool all of our kids from birth to college. I hope the sound's good. I see Deidre's there, so say picture's good, sounds good. That'd be great. And what I do in these times is we're going to answer some questions. I got some mailed in. You'll have some. Please get your questions together. There's no question you can ask that I can't say I don't know. So feel free to ask anything. and what I normally do is I try to start out with a little conversation about something that might be useful to you that I or we've learned in the course of our lives. So, what I want to do is talk to you about. Good, thank you. So, I want to talk to you about um, time management. Okay. So, I wrote a little book some years ago on the one success secret you can't do without. Is that the name of it? The one success habit you can't do without. The one success habit you can't do without. If that's straight or backwards, I don't know. And I talk about really it's being able to get done what you need to do every day. So this is a homeschool nightmare for most of us because we feel like we're behind. We're, you know, under a cloud, having a challenge. And I'm going to try to share with you a way to think about what you're doing with time management and homeschooling, or really life, that could dramatically help you if you embrace it. Like we talked last week about once you get an insight, you can get to a new place. So give me a few minutes, just share about time management, and then once your questions, Jody will join us. Here's where I want to start. So managing time isn't really the right question. It's more about managing actions. In a way, it's even managing energy, but I'd say actions is fair. So figuring out how to manage your actions is part of the key. And most of us struggle with this because the way in which we are operating is not, um, how do I say this kindly? Most of us are like hallucinating or having an illusion, like at a magic show when they saw the woman in half and spread, and you go, cut her in half. That's amazing. How do you do that? And of course he didn't. But if you're having an illusion, that's what you think. Well, we have this illusion about time, and it shows up worse in procrastination. So in procrastination, if you've experienced this idea, is when you know you need to do something, it benefits you, delaying it will harm you, and you are literally just simply not um, actually taking action on it, but you feel bad about it, and it's still looming out there. So you're delaying acting. And what I want to argue is that procrastination is actually a myth. It's not a thing. It's a made up thing. Procrastination is actually pretending you want to do something you don't want to do. And you use this word want freely. It can mean a lot of things, and words have that fluidity to them. But if you're pretending that you want to do something that you don't really want to do, you're going to be in a psychological mess. Sorry, I always get choked up talking about time management. um, so if you think, you're pretending you want to do something and you really don't want to do it, and you probably had that, things that you came to a conclusion in life that said, I really don't want to do that. And once you woke up, you got your energy back, you got some freedom. Well, that's what's going on all the time. If you'll look at your life and look at things that you're not working on, that you're not doing, you're not spending energy on, you say you're going to, you want to, you say, but you never do, you're much better off admitting to yourself that you're not doing it. So, yeah, the time management book is on, it's at Amazon. Just look under Fred Lybrand. So the the game with procrastination is that you are pretending you want to do something when you have clear evidence because you're taking no action that you don't want to. And you could at least say you don't want to now. I mean, a lot of times I like to say, you can say you're going to do it tomorrow, but we'll see. And so much goes through our homeschooling where we're not getting things done and we say we want to do them, but we're not actually doing them. And I think you're much better off being honest. In fact, I can tell you the whole secret to counseling of all the models that are out there and you getting healthier as a human being is the degree to which you tell the truth. The more truth you tell, the healthier you get. The more you lie to yourself, the more towards schizophrenia you are. So it's all that. Same in relationships. The more truth people tell to each other, the healthier they can be. And this is the game. If you ever watch a sitcom, all sitcoms are based on people not telling the truth. You just watch them, and it's just you look at it, and there would be no situation if you just tell the truth. Why don't you just tell them? Well, we need to learn to do that to ourselves, and being honest with yourself that you don't want to do something is a starting place. So you could either drop it, which will give you a lot of energy, or you could say, I want to. How do I go about the process of wanting to want to? But it begins with being honest. If you're not working on it, you sure don't want to do it now. And just admit it. It's if you plan things for the future and you say, I will work on it, June 25th. I will work on it then, but I'm not going to work on it between now and then. Um, the dictionary can at times call that procrastination, but other times they call it planning. And I think planning is a really cool way to go. So I got two little tips for you. Just with those thoughts in mind, I want to invite you to start thinking about them. And they work like this. Number one, I would highly recommend that you get rid of your to-do list. Like throw it away. What you want to replace it with, if you're going to use a list, is a will-do list. And I'll talk about this in the book. You want to put on your list things you will do. My mother was great at time management. My personality is not like hers, so I've had to wrestle through this. But my mother always got every list she ever did done because she wouldn't put anything on the list that she wasn't going to do. She would know. We tend to make these lists and they grow and grow. Somebody today I was talking to has a list of 400 items. And what happens is it becomes a collection bin for all the things that we want to do, right? And in that collection bin process, all that does is heaps on guilt and frustration, and we don't want to forget it and whatever else. But I can tell you, if you can be in touch with honestly admitting what you want to get accomplished and then only putting on your list what you will do, and you can figure that out pretty easily. You just look at an item today, like I'm going to um, um, I'll just say something. Call the bank about something, and I would ask you, so are you going to call the bank about something? And you go, yeah. And then I'll say, really? And you go, yeah. And I go, really? Twice. And you go, I'm not sure, maybe. Yeah. So that'd be in a maybe column. That's not a will do. That's a may do. If you want to think that's valuable to keep around somewhere, do it, but don't call it a to-do list. Call it a may do, holding, something. Uh, if you will just limit your list to what you're really going to get done, you'll be shocked at how productive you are. You do this going on vacation because you have some kind of list of stuff you got to do, and it has to be done for you to leave. Got to turn off the water. You got to get the dog fed. You got to all the things. The other thing I want to suggest to you, and then we'll go to questions, is you're also going to be better off organizing your time like billionaires do. So billionaires don't have will do list, to do list, want to list. They don't have lists. They don't do lists. The nature of the structure of their life means they're not doing lists. What they have is what's called a calendar. And in the calendar, they have appointments with people or times they work on things. And so their time is really scheduled out. So they're going through a busy process of making decisions or looking at certain things rapidly and effectively. And as a result, you'll find that it's on the calendar. You know it's coming. You can put a reminder to it, and you don't have to think about it. So again, your energy and life is freed up. So for homeschooling, it's sort of the same thing. This is what goes on and why it's chaotic. When we have things we want to do in a list, and maybe today, maybe not, and every day you're trying to plan it out and figure it out for the rest of the day, and you don't have a regular sequence or plan or anything, it's a chaotic world. Jody's mom, for example, cooked, went to the grocery store every day for the food to cook that night, every day. Now, that was chaotic. And, who knows all the psychology and reasons behind it, but it's not the way to go. Much better to organize it, have an idea of what the meals are, etc. So if you want to really start working with this, start figuring out a calendar and schedule. If you in your homeschool have a time we do math or time we do school, a section and whatever breaks down in there, then that's when it is. Just like you have like a time to get in bed and hopefully a time to get up. If you don't have a bedtime and don't have a getting up time for your kids, and it's you're going to have a sporadic life. You may think it's hip and cool, and maybe you're hippie, and I'm cheering for you. But I'm going to tell you, your sanity and safety and getting things done is going to be far more dependent on you being able to put things in a schedule in some way and being faithful to it. We're in a home group for our church. Well, we have a night to meet, right? And we have a certain amount of hours to meet. We have 2 hours Tuesday night. That's our time. And we take the last one off. So we get a break. And if we didn't have that, how are we all going to coordinate our actions? It was the same thing with just about everything. So there's enough to think about. Throw me your questions. I'll probably start with Yulia because she's addressing the topic, and Jody will be here quite soon. So let's open the chat. Here we go. So thanks for addressing this topic. It's a big problem in our home, and we're not left side of the brain type of people, right? And I'm not either. Let me just assure you. So struggling constantly with schedules and to-do lists. Yeah, and you do that because you can definitely. Jody's showing up. You can definitely solve this, and the goal is not to be hyper list, hyper controlled. Mother would also confess in all of her effectiveness with time that she also felt like she needed counseling because she was enslaved to it. She would put all the ingredients out in the order she'd use them to cook. She never went to bed without the kitchen being clean, no matter how late, no matter how anything. And that's kind of wearing too. So she wasn't really a flexible person. So somewhere in here, people are more flexible and spontaneous. People are more controlled. But I'm going to tell you, what you want is some sense of where things fit overall in a schedule. Like if you're a churchgoer, you probably go to church when they're having church, don't you? So obviously you can follow a schedule, whether you're right brain or left. Well, the same game can happen with your kids. But the trick, if you set aside a time for homeschool, let's say we're going to do homeschool mornings, 8 to noon or something. Don't get down on yourself that it's not working the first week. Just stick with it. In a few weeks, I'd say for sure in 3 months, and it might take that long, 90 days, you'll settle into that pattern. But you just keep coming back at it. Keep cheering for yourself. Don't beat yourself up. Just keep going. All right.
Hey.
Anything else to say? We've been talking about time
Okay.
management.
Nice.
And what kind of questions are on your mind? I did get a few that were emailed to us. So we have some stuff to talk about. These questions so sometimes they're the same, but sometimes it's the nuance of what's going on. And being able to talk it through with somebody, this is part of why this is valuable, is getting some perspective from someone else. Most of what we're trying to do is not give you the tactics, even though we do. I'll say go try this and do that. It's really more about how I want to invite you to think about it. because as I like to say, it's really hard to um, think crooked and walk straight. So ultimately, the challenges you have, in my humble opinion, are going to be challenges of how you think about things. And once you can think clear about it, or clearly, or clearer, you're going to be able to see a pretty profound difference happen. So, you got that?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, anything you add to that? I
No.
know you got it. Um, oh, sorry. Maybe out of order. Schedule to list so struggling with. Let's see the next one. To care for myself as a mom while homeschooling three kids, grades 1 to 8, plus active 1 year old. No time for me to get my hair cut or nails. Some for years. Husband's also traveling. Yeah, this is tough. So there's also just alone time. It always reminds me of the story of Susanna Wesley, who had something like 19 children. Charles Wesley and John Wesley, famous Methodist founders of the Methodist Church. And supposedly she would take her outer skirt, they're layered, and put it over her head just to hide from everybody periodically, just to get a moment of peace. So I can certainly be sympathetic.
Well, I was just remembering that one day, I don't know, you had read something about moms wanting to run away or something. You looked at me and said, "Do you ever want to run away?" I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
Would never do it,
I heard a
but does
radio
that
thing said
cross my
all
mind?
mothers want to run away from home. And I went, what? And I went home and said, Jody, do you want to run away? She went, oh, I think about it all the time.
Well, not all the time, but
Well,
yeah,
that's what
surprised
that's what
Brad.
it felt like.
That
I
surprised
said,
Brad. I'm
really?
like, well, it gets kind of chaotic sometimes.
I had no
So
idea.
we
Oh,
sympathize. Um,
I'm going to love this question coming up, but let's focus on this one. So, sympathy. Jody would have empathy, to really get that it is a challenge. And one piece is it's a season. But the other piece is very much the same thing. You've got to figure out how to stabilize the game so you get some breaks. And that could mean most anything. It could be a sitter or a friend trading out, where you keep kids for a period of time so she can go get her nails done and a haircut and trade off the other way, something like
yeah.
that. I mean, y'all.
I mean, that's the first thing I thought about is just trading off kids. I mean, your eighth grader probably can watch some of the kids, but maybe not the 1 year old. But that's up to y'all. But yeah, I think the easiest is to either hire a like teen from down the street to come in for a little bit or trade off with friends.
Yeah, or barter. You don't, money's tight. I get it, but there can be a bartering game that can be in play. By the way, I've never heard the phrase passive 1 year old.
Oh, active one.
Yeah, so
That's true.
you're normal, right? You're not crazy. But you need some time even for yourself. I mean, I hope what should be going on with the three kids in 1 to 8 is they should be in a room working together on their stuff. If you're caught teaching them, this is part of the problem. You want them to learn how to teach themselves. But if you're in there and everybody's quiet, hopefully, and they're doing their work and they know what their work is, well, that's a time you get to read too, or write a letter, or answer mail, or look at the Quicken or whatever you need to do to catch up, because you can use that fine sign that time because you're modeling to them that you're busy too, and they have some accountability in there, so they're not jabbering with each other, which they would be want to do. So setting up that game that way can be a part of the trick. But I would say in general, if you want to write a note about how you do it, um, if you don't have scheduled times for school, and inside of that scheduled sequence of what the subjects are that they're studying, and scheduled things, even if you teach some, you shouldn't be teaching the whole time. They ought to have homework or something they're doing, or reading quietly. Those breaks are a big deal. The active 1 year old's got a nap sometime, I hope. So there's that trade off: morning nap, afternoon nap. You kind of figure that out. And if you can occupy the kids during the baby's nap time, that gives you some sanity time, whether it's to straighten the house or read something or go outside and take a deep breath and look at
Right. I mean, and going away is different than being at home. And I mean, quiet time. Everybody can have quiet time until they leave the house. You know, 1 to 2 can be everybody's quiet time, or they're all, and mom can have some quiet time there. But as far as you getting away from the home, I think the easiest is going to be to try to find some other gals that want to trade off some.
One last thing I'd tell you, Julia, is this is an important phrase. You ought to write it down, put it on a note card, carry it around, and say it over and over and over for a week or two until you get it into your soul. And it's this phrase: it won't last forever. And that's whatever's going on. If you're online with a tech person, it won't last forever. If you're in a crisis, it won't last forever. Your children aren't going to be in your home forever. Your husband's traveling won't last forever. That understanding that when we think something bad is going to last forever, that's what is referred to as hell. Hell is a bad place that lasts forever. So when we get caught thinking the thing we're in is going to last forever, it emotionally creates turmoil. When we remind ourselves it won't last forever, we get a lot more patient. So give that a try. Um, so let me keep going here. Um, all right, I got great questions, but so Nicole, I'm gonna get to you next. Let me back up here. This is going to be a different subject real quick, and we'll probably come back to schedules because I like to talk about whatever I talked about. How would you deal with a pediatrician that suggests to put your child back into school? Um, well, first of all, I need more of the story. So, is is there a reason? Is the pediatrician they qualified? They're concerned about something? Is there something they see that they're concerned about, or is it just a biased orientation that thinks homeschooling doesn't work? The trick is doctors can make recommendations, and that's why you go to them. But you're not obligated to follow them. So if you need the pediatrician to agree with you, that's a persuasion strategy, and you've got to figure out what's going on. You can convince them it's good or not. Um, but the easiest thing to do is just to say, thank you for the thought. I'll consider it. And then you just go on with life. Because how often do you see them unless they live next door? But I'd probably need a little more. Do you have a thought of that?
No, that's exactly unless there's. I would say why, what are the reasons, and you might have some good ones, but if it's just all kids should be in school, then thanks. No.
Exactly. Um, so the pediatrician, I'm getting
And
another
you
note
might
here.
get if that's a real issue, you might change
They're okay with the
pediatricians.
elementary years is okay, but that once he would enter middle school, he should go back. And the question would be why?
Yeah.
What's the what's the trick? And if it's something like socialization, well, lucky guess,
Uh,
socialization. Yeah, and so then you have to figure out what do you mean by that, you know, and where are the studies? I mean, honestly, obviously, the pediatrician has no idea what she or he's talking about because that's not a thing. Socialization is, yeah, people can get isolated and not know how to interact with people, but you can also get in with the wrong crowd and you're socialized in a bad way. If your children are isolated, I think that's an issue. But there's church and youth groups and organizations and activities and
sports
sports
and
and all
all
kinds
kind
of
of things.
stuff that can be done to learn to interact with people. But oddly enough, you really want your kids to learn to interact with a range, with the adults and younger, etc. That creates way more balance in the game. But mostly, I mean, me being me, I'd say the pediatrician, I'd say, hey, shoot me some good data on that. I mean, is this your opinion or is this something you know from science and research that this is a real issue? Because if you'll give me that, I give you my word, I'll read it. But I want to give you some stuff, and you got to promise you'll read it. And most people will back off of that because they're just spouting fluff. And I sound irritated, and it may be because I'm in a bad mood. But I get a little bit um, agitated and bumfuzzled and grumpy about people who spout off things they don't know. Now, I don't know about this pediatrician, but I am telling you this. Um, the gracious thing to do is say, hey, thanks for your opinion. We'll see how it goes. I mean, if I were really in a conversation, I'd say, how do you explain the kids that go to high school and turn out to be really bad people? I mean, they were socialized. Does that system really work that well, or is it you're just playing a statistical game?
Well, it's interesting too, the socialization issue. That's something that 30, 25, 30 years ago, when the homeschooling was just kind of becoming a thing in the United States, that okay, yeah, we need to make sure we're with other people because if you live out in Timbuktu and you never see anybody except your own family, that's an issue. But that is so not an issue anymore. I mean, it's just interesting that
Yeah.
that person thinks that's an issue. I mean, like for instance, we would if we did look at you and you were never around anybody else except only y'all, then we probably would suggest
Yeah.
something. But
I mean, if you really want to trick them, say, I just don't know how to avoid the bad socialization that turns out awful children from being in high school together.
oh, that's a good one. And there, we're pro education. We're not anti school. Although things are getting a little weirder lately. But we have, through the years, there have been some people we knew that were homeschooling, but they weren't really schooling their kids, and their kids were way behind. And the mom just couldn't do it, but she kept thinking she could. And we suggested those children needed to go to
Yeah,
a school.
sometimes that happens.
So
So throws out the last part of this. It's unfortunate because I'm going there for a physical and I have to deal with this. My son is actually flourishing in the socialization. He has no problem talking with adults or any age kid. Yeah, so the easy thing to do is say thank you for your suggestion. So you think middle school they ought to be back in school, and they'll say yeah, and say thank you. I'll pray about it, or I'll think about it. Prayer is a better frame because then they've got to argue against you and God. So I just say thank you and go on. Just it's not. I wouldn't make it an issue personally.
yeah.
All right, so switching gears. Sorry if you already covered this. I can't listen and type at the same time. Yeah, I understand that. In regards to your comment about creating a schedule where you cover a subject consistently with children who have learning hindrances, it's actually difficult to predict how long it's going to take to make the amount of progress we hope to make in a certain subject. So we set a time limit.
In the past.
Is that the right? In the past, and left me with the feeling of always being behind. I can see the value of your suggestion, but how would you address these feelings of anxiety that might cause for both me and them? And then by me and them by extension to my children. Okay, so let's get this man one up here. Um, so here's the trick. You're obviously the progress you're trying to make is unrealistic. If you're having to extend the time to make progress, then there's something unrealistic going on. You've either not put enough time, like, gosh, we spend 10 minutes on this subject, but we don't make enough progress. Well, you probably don't have enough time for the progress you want. So that needs to match. But inside of that, I'd stick to the time and then learn how to make progress inside that time limit. What are you really going to do with it? Because the more, there's a thing called Parkinson's law. It says work expands to fill the time allotted for its completion. So if you give somebody a lot of time, they'll take a lot of time. So you want to just stick within that boundary. If you had a reading time for a child and you wanted them to read, let's say in an hour, you wanted them to read 30 pages. That's 2 minutes a page. And they were only reading 20 pages. Well, the magic isn't to expand time so they get to 30. The magic is helping them learn how to read better, read faster, so they get up to it. But having a realistic expectation would help a lot. Now, anxiety itself is generated by thinking about the future in a negative way. So the future is going to turn out bad. So in this context, they're not making enough progress. And you mentioned learning hindrances, etc. What I would do is, I don't know what your standard is for their progress, but I would encourage you to try to think about, how do we measure progress for these children based on this week compared to last week. In other words, if progress was measured by how they're doing in some demonstrable way, not of something you're trying to reach to, but rather something you have a baseline, and then we keep working at it, and they've gotten better. Like if they commonly misspelled words, so there's a common, dyslexic type thing. If you knew for a fact that they really had learned to spell 10 words last week, and now they can spell them and they don't misspell them, that's progress. So measure it that way. If you're trying to get them up to a test level or something, that's going to be a bit of a frustration. So this day in and day out game of making progress is going to be relative to where you've been. And in all honesty, I think you want to get a reasonable amount of time and a reasonable expectation, and stick to the time, and then up their progress inside of that time. What do you think?
That all sounds fantastic. Since we don't know all the ins and outs of everything, um, are there things that you could, that maybe are kind of extra things that you're doing in schooling that maybe you want to cut back on so that you can focus on the um, core things? Just evaluate that, but otherwise, I think what Fred said.
Cool. All right. So I'm liking all these questions. Can you talk about how to handle money allowances for children? I have a 10 and 12-year-old, and I used to pay them according to their school report card grades. We don't have report cards anymore. Um, yeah, so this is one of those things that I'm going to say, all right, everybody figure out how you want to do it. Um, I'm not going to stand in uh, judgment at all about this, but I would say, think through what the principles you're trying to use are. So in our thinking this through, um, we didn't have allowances, did we? No. So I had allowance growing up. I had friends that did the report card thing, and I was kind of, it was irritating, um, to do grades for money. But that's another story. So in my experience growing up, everybody got their allowance, and I had siblings that would use their allowance on, eventually, cigarettes and uh, booze in the later years. I think, I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty sure. Um, but the dad offered us all at one point. He said, "Hey, new deal. If you want it, you can have allowance, and here's your allowance, or you can have no allowance, and what you have to do is justify the expense to me." And I took that deal, and I got way more money than they ever got. And I got pretty good at being persuasive. Now, I'm not saying with what we do with the kids was not justified. We would do that. They come request, and we'd think it through. But we also would generate projects where they could make money. Isn't that what we did?
I think yes, we've talked to a lot of different people about this, and really is comes down to what works for your family. We recently were going through this with a couple, and giving the kids some money on, and then they said, well, they actually have lots of money in their bank account already from grandparents, and we're like, well, but anyway, one thing I would say is there's some household maintenance chores that you just do because you live here. You don't get paid for them.
Yeah. Ta-da! You're a step ahead of her.
And
Yeah.
then some extra things, a chart of like, if you do this, you get paid this much. You do this.
Or we come up with a project. They might say, "What can I do to make this for this?" And I can invent projects.
So,
Or there's babysitting. There are other things.
oh
When
yeah,
they get
sure, when they're
older.
a little bit older.
But inside the house, we could provide ways that if you provide above and beyond value, that's golden. You know. So that's kind of, and this is a good business principle. So people, they're hired. Everyone's hired to solve a problem for a business. That's why they're hired. And if you solve that problem, you'll get paid. If you'll solve more problems than you're hired for, you'll get more money and advancement. And if you cause more problems than you solve, you'll get fired. Well, the same thing in the family. The kids that cause more problems get attention and consequences and frustration. If they do their chores and all, it's all good. If they want more, doing above and beyond is a different game. So largely we wanted to make sense of the spending and didn't quite want to do that with the allowance. I get the value, the value of it. So it's not the end of the world. It's just it is an easy system to kind of abuse if it's not seen as earned, but more like your stipend or something. So I think you want to work with it and play with it, and different personalities of kids obviously can play into it. But by and large, I think you want to teach kids that it's the value they bring that justifies the money, just like you have to do at work, etc. So, and then play with it. I mean, the easiest thing to do is set up a game plan and then commit to try it for 3 months. And then we're going to set it on the calendar, sit down and revisit it. So it doesn't have to be a long-term precedent. It can be an experiment, and then you can find out if it works. And I think you'll be golden that way.
Right.
Going back real quick to Nicole, good point. My goal the past year has been based on trying to catch him up, talking about learning hindered to state standards. Yeah, this is where the problem is. So it's a huge role in your anxiety, and it is. And if you start measuring where are we compared to last week, so you're getting momentum and making progress, I think you're going to find it to be golden. And also, be honest about the future. You don't know it. So it might go bad, it might go okay. You don't know what's going to happen. And you want to be faithful to build these skills into that child. Phew. All right, let's see. Yeah, I've got this question about support groups. And please shoot your questions. So let's see if this will post for us. So this question is, did you guys join any homeschool co-op or other learning support group? If so, can you share experiences? What's your general thoughts on that? Also, it seems like some homeschooling families take advantage of the flexibility and travel quite a bit. Thoughts on that in terms of learning and other benefits? Thank you for your support, Jenny. So this will have most of it there. So go.
We did not join any co-ops. They were available, a lot of like one day, like on Fridays. And basically, I felt like that they were getting plenty of socialization from other things. And so it would kind of just take a day away from what we were doing in school. So I felt like it put us behind. Um, for some people, it's great and it works, and that's terrific. We did not. And they didn't suffer from not being in it.
Yeah, and part of our model was, we didn't look at this like the children needed a teacher. We were chief learning officers. So our goal was to cause the kids to learn. We wanted them to be their main teacher. And that doesn't mean they didn't use books and mentors, and didn't mean we didn't help and other stuff. But it wasn't like we're teaching, they're a blank slate and we're putting their head. We think they're wired to learn. And so what we did is we set up an environment that invited and encouraged them to learn. So as a result, we were doing what we called homeschooling, as opposed to co-op schooling, group meeting, weekly schooling, group everyday schooling, private, group everyday, public. Those are all different models. They're more mass or group models. And we were trying to invite them to learn how to teach themselves, to take material information, wrestle with it, hang in there, endure the frustration, and work with it until they go, I got it. And so in that orientation, for us, a co-op or something really didn't make sense. Co-ops are commonly, if you aren't confident or don't know that it's doing, or you think your child needs some competition. Now we had 5 kids, so there was some built-in competition, which
Well,
I agree some kids work better
yeah,
that
and for the
way.
little ones, a lot of times it's, well, they can do art and they can do some fun science things, and then as they get older, I've heard, well, I can't teach chemistry, but that person can, and um, yeah,
Yeah, and that's uh, kind of a part of the game too. Some of the convenience and whatever. I mean, we would our kids. I helped start a private school, and they tried to go there for a little bit. We experimented with it because they go for free, and the kids found out they were just going slow and tutoring their friends. So they finally asked, "Can we just come up and hang out for lunch on Wednesdays?" and and the head dean or headmaster said, "Sure." And so they just would hang out with their friends, but they found they could go at a faster pace on their own, and that's sort of the game. So when you really want to do something, nobody has to make you. If you really want to read a book, you figure out time to go read it. If you're willing to read a book, you probably need accountability, and that's what makes you do it. That's why you could probably learn any class, any college course. You could probably learn most of them. You could learn. You can get books, Khan Academy, whatever else, Udemy course, and you can learn on your own if you're really motivated. But most of us aren't. That's why showing up for classes and having a teacher and some assignments and all gets pushes that information through our brain and we learn stuff. So that's part of the challenge. And if you figure out that you really want to educate your children, you'll figure out how to do that, especially if you want to encourage them to be learners. Not against co-ops though. I'm not saying that if they work and they're
right,
helpful to you, that's great. But I've watched enough of this, and look, everything you throw at kids work because they're learners. You'll have some people it worked for me, anecdotally, all of them. I mean, even it doesn't even matter your reading program. 20% of the people teach themselves to read. So all reading programs could look like they work if you pull the right people out.
well, a lot of the co-ops also require you to do something, like you to teach the mom to teach something or be an administrator or something. So it's not like, usually it's not like you just drop them off. I don't, the ones I've
Right,
seen.
right.
The travel, flexibility, traveling.
Yeah, I there are families that do that. We did not. Our vacations, we always did like vacations in the same place over and over because we were trying to build deep memories. Some we had friends who would do like history travel and stop and read all the signs on the way and go to battlefields or whatever they did. I don't. I think that's a kind of a family preference type
Yeah,
thing,
as
but
long as you're staying up on
yeah, you just
everything.
want to think it through. I mean,
Yeah.
even on vacation, we would have the kids do homeschool. Some they'd read some, they did some math in the car traveling. Have a long day of driving. Good, and knock out 30 minutes, an hour of doing math. You're sitting there, might as well keep active. Let's see. Jenny said, "Thanks. You're quite welcome." Uh, oh yeah, she had written that in. Good. Glad you can make it, Jenny. Um, were they involved in sports activities? So our kids, our genetics, we might could do like a soccer team, but we're I think our tallest is 5'9", maybe 5'10". He might claim 5'11". I'm 5'6", 6.5 growing up. We have a son that's probably 4, something like that. Might be 5'5". Jody's 5'5", which is tall. But what I'm saying is we didn't get a lot of athleticism built into us. And so the way we approached sports was if we wanted everybody to try sports. So everybody did play sport at least one year, baseball and soccer's and um, taekwondo and different things.
Wow.
And if they had a knack and a motivation interest, I think we would have pursued it. Like a friend of mine one day was telling me about his son. My son, he's so good at football. And I went, yeah, Bob, I hear it all the time. And he said, no, he really is. We were at a conference and we're chatting. He said he's just gifted in a very different way, high school. And I said, great, we'll see. That's fine. But I wouldn't just all the time parents say, my kid, they really got it. And anyway, Bob Tebow had a son named Tim Tebow, and that's who we were talking to.
He really was good.
So he really turned out
They
okay.
all learned tennis. We did tennis.
Yep, that's true.
And they did one. Our daughter actually was our most athletic, or enjoyed it most, or whatever you want to say. But she did soccer for many years as a little, elementary, and then did tennis as like junior high,
Yeah,
high school.
Holmes did a good bit. Holmes is more
And
athletically
yeah,
balanced
so
and
it was just kind of,
played
do you want to
intramural in
play? Are you
college.
enjoying it? That kind of thing.
Yeah, but if it was something they were going to really pursue, but we also with 5 kids, think about it. If we had them all in sports and we got to go to every event and all, our life's over, and their life's over. And so it didn't match for us in terms of what we're trying to do. And if they had been athletes and really loved it, they always had to stay active, and we'd shoot basketball, and we had all kinds of stuff for them, physically activity. We'd get out
Yeah,
there
that's
and
important.
teach them to throw a football and do stuff, throw a rock, learn how to do stuff. That's it. Sorry, our window just something hammered it. There was a hawk outside
Oh my
in the
gosh.
tree, and it apparently was either getting attacked or is attacking back. No, it's still there. It's griping.
That's weird.
Sorry about that. Anyway, so that's close to an answer I can get. I don't even know where I am now.
Gosh,
This one.
that's interesting. Yeah.
I think it's this one. Take out what the librarians are saying. We tried a CC co-op this year for our first homeschool year. Kids didn't enjoy it because the co-op took up a lot of time and energy and slowed my kids down. And that can be the experience. Some people can help and they love it. My brother and sister-in-law and their son have been part of classical conversations in Florida. And
the whole way up.
Yeah, the whole way up. They seem to
the whole
like
way
it and
up.
work well. I'm cheering for them.
Yeah.
But it is taking extra time. There are certain efficiencies. With us, our kids started school at 7:30 in the morning. They're through about 12:30. They've got lunch. They play in the afternoon or do activities, all kinds of stuff. No homework at night, and it just was incredibly efficient for them to be learning how to read, do their math, and write day in and day out. And they all, I don't know if they all love it or not, but I think they would all admit they're educated. And that's what we're hoping for, right? Let's see here. Do you see benefits from learning as a group for group projects? Yeah, so that's an interesting question. Um, as they age, for sure, when you get so in the classical model, you got data, logic, and rhetoric. Okay, so data stages up through about age 10, where they just like to memorize and learn information. Logic is how things fit together. So 10 a little later, 12 for sure, arguing and debate because they're fooling with logic. And then rhetoric is the communication level where you're working with other human beings. And every subject's that way. You got to learn the pieces and how it fits together and how to use it with people. So group stuff is that level. So I'd say in particular, like 14 and up, prefrontal cortex is in, some other stuff. That's when group stuff starts working. But there are ways to do that too. Like, the boys would have a project in the yard that they'd all have to work on, and I would put one of them in charge, not always the oldest. And they're in charge, and you got any complaints, you know, direct it through him. And if you got complaints at him, let me know and I'll deal with it. But y'all got to learn to cooperate. You got to learn to work together on these things. So learning to communicate, learning to cooperate, getting projects that have to be done together that everybody's accountable for. We can't get it done. We can't quit until we get it done. And that was all good for them. We have one son that would just sit there and talk and tell stories the whole time and not really work as hard, and others that want to get it done, and everybody learned. But I I I think getting involved in civic organizations, other stuff, like our kids were very involved in youth groups. So there's a lot of group projects, group learning, and that stuff you have to learn by just being enmeshed in it. Our boys were in scouts too,
I
so
think, did
they're
a lot of that.
all leaders in that regard. We landed on RC about 2 months ago, and now the whole family is happy. Praise the Lord. So RC is Robinson curriculum, which is, we used it, modified a little bit, but so a lot of y'all know what that is, but some may not. So you can check it out, Robinson curriculum. You'll find it. Google it. And now the whole family's having kids finish their studies by 1 p.m. every day. They love this new efficient style. And that's right. And a lot of times you have to settle into it, but children really do like some predictability. It's great for things to be kind of stable uh, and settled. It's just it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Another thing we struggle with, it almost seems like my son sometimes uses frustration as a tool to get out of doing a task that he doesn't want to do. He laser focuses on his feelings of frustration, and it seems like he is purposely not allowing himself to be consoled. I don't want to sit and watch him sabotage himself like that. How can you get someone to do anything when they're angry and don't want to do it? Yeah, so this is really something I've been rethinking that I've known about and used for years. This is a frame kind of control game, the context that he's setting up. So he's really trying to control you and the situation. And he does frustration because it works. And I can tell you the most fundamental thing when you see this stuff is he thinks there's a chance that he can get out of it. So if he's had experience of that, he can be using it to get out of the event, right? Seems frustration to get out of doing a task. So the most important thing is to make it clear that there's no chance to get out of it. And the moment he understands that, he's going to be fine because people don't try for things they can't have. So that's the game. Now, what I would do with something like the frustration, I mean, what Jody would have done is I'm going to let dad deal with frustration, boy to boy. And that would work out. But the other is um, you can say, look, you can go to your room and get a grip on your frustration, right? Or you can go ahead and do the task. And go to the room and you get a grip on your frustration. When you come out, you're going to do the task. That's how it goes. Because you're going to learn to do tasks. You're going to have jobs in your life. You have to learn to do them. This is what's required. And if you want to appeal why you shouldn't have to do it, talk to dad, talk to us, or something like that. But right now, you get it done. It's very much with parenting. The kids would say, "Why?" Right? And I always said the same thing after I figured this out. I'd say, "I will tell you why after you've done it, because I want you to learn to just do what you're asked to do, and then we'll get into the reasons and does it make sense." But I don't need kids going, "Why math isn't relevant? I don't see why we have to study it." It's not a point. You're the kids, we're the parents. This is school, and this is the way it goes. We don't want you going to college or having a boss and constantly going, "Why? Why do I have to do that? Why do I have to do that? Why do I have to be nice to the customers?" You know, Ain't nobody got time for that. You just need to learn how to bring your will under the control of being about the business, of being a good child, employee, son, daughter, etc. I do sound grumpy. Um, I'm sure it's blood sugar. Um, Anger, also, I just mentioned there's more to. We have an emotions course that goes through a lot of this stuff, and it would be good for him to go through that course. Um, but anger is generated largely because he has rules in his head about how things should go. Should be this way, must be this way, has to be that way. And as a result, when things don't go that way, he gets mad. And if he can learn to catch on that there's no cosmic rule about how things must go, that he can prefer it, he'd like it. Wouldn't it be fun if I didn't have to do this task? That's fine, but too bad. So, I'd prefer not to do the task, but I have to do it. It's different than I shouldn't be doing it. That's just always going to be a mess.
Mm-hmm. Computer.
At what age did your kids start using a computer, and was it for educational purposes? Yeah, so I don't know about ages, but we combined computer and I can tell you, here's what we did. We combined computer and TV in our head as far as a more passive screen time.
Yeah.
They're both screens. And in thinking that way, we also didn't do, I just never could get myself convinced that Game Boys and
Xboxes
and
and I
P2,
don't know what other
PS2,
we didn't have those.
yeah, the nature of the game, and some of that'll all change. The metaverse is probably going to change. Who knows what's going to change? Um, but regardless, even then on computer, they would do some computer games, and certain ones I like better than others. If they taught them strategy, just bloodshed and shooting people was not that attractive to us. But they could use it. There were a variety of games we had. Some were educational, some were
Yeah.
other stuff. Um, and we would allow them time on the weekends the way we did it. They had an allotment of computer time, a couple hours or something like that. I don't remember. And then during the week you could add more time to your weekend by reading. So if you for every minute you read, you got every
Every
2 minutes you read, you got 1 minute of
something.
TV
Yeah.
time. That was the game, and so they could bank some extra time on or TV/computer. Now the rule was on TV is I was watching TV, it didn't count against them. So if they watched what I was watching, that kept me accountable, and then I could stop and explain stuff to them. So it's always a fun moment to teach. Um, but for the most part, um, as they age, they got more access to computer time. But computer time could turn into, Forrest doing a filming a video and then doing editing and stuff. So as they age, we give them over more responsibility, control. At one point, I had a son that was looking at some uh, indelicate pictures, not terrible, but in a bad direction. And I showed him how, hey, there's a cache here, and I can see all your pictures, and look what you've been looking at. And he was mortified. And I told him, I said, you're just going to have to figure out what you want to do with your mind and your life. If you want to get hooked on this stuff, you get hooked on it. If you want something better, you avoid it. And we eventually also added Covenant Eyes or whatever it was back
Yeah,
then.
some protection. When they were little, there were a lot of little computer games that were fun and learning. Maybe they were teaching them logic or just different little fun things like that that were totally, fine. I don't even, they couldn't even, in the beginning of all that, they weren't on the internet or anything like that.
Gotcha.
So,
So let me zip through these. We'll go a little long if you want to hang in there with us. Um, but so I keep hearing you say that you did do homeschool all year long with your family. This idea seems to be overwhelming. Any suggestions of how to start that practice? Well, if the day's not overwhelming, the year won't be. So the trick is to get a day that's not overwhelming. And then you're not just trying to make it to the finish line to get a break or whatever. It's just our routine and our pattern. And so we did do it year long, especially the math, because you get so behind. If you take 3 months off, your brain turns to ooze and forgets all the math. That's why the books repeat a third of the year or so, a quarter, third of the year from the previous year. So learning to make the days not overwhelming, and they shouldn't be overwhelming. If you do school year round, you don't have to do as much every day. So just think about the amount of hours that you're putting in. And you can do that. That's a good math trick to sit down and think about how much time does school take, public school. So you got to get up, you're maybe getting on a bus. By the time you get home, how much time, and then how much time over those two semesters or whatever, however the game works, has been invested in school. And you're going to find it's a pretty massive number. And your 5 hours mathed out over a year won't add up to it. You're actually spending less time than they would have been in school, but because you're doing a little bit consistently, you're doing great. So I'd work on getting a day not to be overwhelming by having a set time, and maybe it's smaller, and that's when we do school, and then we're done with school. If you didn't get school done, you might have some homework in the afternoon, but we do school then, and then we can do other things and not worry about it because we did school. Uh,
right,
way I'd swing at it.
exactly.
Appreciate sharing. You're quite welcome. Appreciate you being here. We enjoyed our co-op last 2 years, but I decided not to join anymore. Feeling similar, I felt like it was an efficient way of learning,
Mhm.
Online classes or an actual subject class. Good. We will miss doing the presentations for sure. Looking to a
Mhm.
different way to socialize would be something to think about. Yeah, you just
Sure.
figure out a game plan. So if he wastes a bunch of time calming down in his room, do we extend the time limit for that subject that day or come back to that same assignment tomorrow? So when you said task, I thought it was a chore or something. So if it's schoolwork, um, he wastes a bunch of time. No, it's that day, but I wouldn't extend it then. I would move it to the afternoon.
It's sorry you didn't get it done now you have homework.
Yeah, you've got, let's say you have I'll just make a number up. You have an hour to do math and you have 10 problems. Just make up numbers. That's your time. Okay. And it starts at 9, it's going to be through at 10. And if you're not done at 10, you're going to have to this afternoon go back to it and work on it to complete it and do corrections. That's how the game works. If you're going to get upset, you're going to have to go to your room and use up your time. You need to decide, because you know what's going to happen? You're going to do the 10 problems. And all we're going to negotiate is how much pain you've got to go through to get the 10 problems done. Because you're going to do this. You're going to learn how to do this. It's going to happen. And if something else is going on, that he's not good at math, he's scared or whatever, you can repeat the same problems a few days in a row so he can master it. But mostly, I promise you, that child thinks there's a chance he doesn't have to do his math. And if you're giving him too much, back off. If it's appropriate, you just plug on. But he needs to get the idea, and you need to get in your head, he's not extending it, he's not changing it. This is his game, he's in control. If you get in there and do it, you get it done, and it's over with. And if you don't get in there and do it, it's not going to be fun. Whew. Hi, Nicole. It's so hard. I sometimes struggle with my 7-year-old. She's sensitive, perfectionistic. This is about the anger stuff. So I think she has some anxiety before starting school, even when I try to make it gentle for her. And that's probably true. And what you want to do is balance. I've talked about this a lot. You want to balance their competence and the challenge. So if they're not really good at a subject and the challenge is too big, that makes anxiety. If they're really good at something and you don't give them much, if they're good at reading, but you don't give them really good books, they'll get bored. So you want to be right between those, where the challenge and their skill meet, and you want to stretch them just a smidge. Thanks for your answers. Thanks for being here. Just want to make sure I get through these. Thanks for your time sharing. We appreciate it. 2, in the community, before starting math, she builds anxiety. What's worked from time to time is making it firm. Just tell her she's not allowed to bake. Yeah, and that's right. Just get your math done and get confident.
And the behavior, I mean, that's kind of a separate issue from school, working on your child's behavior.
Yeah.
Because you don't want, that is not appropriate. That's not good. Yes, we do. We all get angry. We all get whatever, but we learn ways to get over it. We learn how to handle it. We learn ways to not get upset. That's part of maturing emotionally. And
yeah, if he's doing 30-minute time limit for math, spend most of it calming down. But he needs to calm down in another room, because he doesn't need to bother you. That's a drama. It's a performance. And he doesn't seem to care if he didn't do his assignment. Well, he doesn't care because there's not a consequence. Like, he'll just drag it out. No, it's over. You're going to have to do it in the afternoon. Sorry. Come in from play an hour before supper. I don't know when you do it. Maybe it's after lunch. You're just back at it. And then you got 1 hour. If you hadn't done anything, 1 hour. And if you get it done, you're free for the rest of the day. If not, you'll get a break and we'll go back and do 1 hour. I mean, this and this won't happen day in and day out. He'll finally figure it out.
Yeah.
He's way more self-interested than you imagine.
Yeah.
And when it's better for him to get his work done than not to, he'll do it. And right now he thinks what he's doing is a better strategy because he's got a chance of getting out of it. And you could even, I can imagine a kid like this. If it's 20 problems, I could do, hey, 5. You got 5 problems to do in 1 hour. And if you get them done, you can play for the rest of that time. You do that a few days, and then you add to 7, then you add to 10, because once he knows he can do it, the game's up. You've tricked him.
And I, just different thoughts. I thought, okay, I would maybe hand him a timer and say, you have 5 minutes to calm down. And that's it. It doesn't take 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Whatever he does in that 30 minutes, he can do in 5. Or, hey, I've got a good way to calm down. I want you to go do 10 push-ups or run around the block for 20 minutes or something. It's not fun. I mean, in the another just idea is if it really is an issue and you're wondering if you can do it or not. Well, for temporarily build in some reward as well as the consequence, just temporarily. Okay, look, we're gonna beat this. We're gonna, you're gonna start doing this in the time, and if every day this week.
Yeah, and that's fine. I just think doing the work himself should be the reward. I think it gets tricky that way. Like I
Mm-hmm.
was saying, if you do 5 problems or 10, something he can really do that's way less, and that's all he has to do, and he's got an hour, and if he gets through in 30 minutes, he can go play for 30 minutes till the next subject. That's the reward, and
Yeah.
then he can learn I can get it done, and then you just keep adding problems to the right amount. There are reasons to do a bigger reward on a game plan, but it's a little more complicated. I would recommend the emotions course. I think it will help dramatically. So balance, challenge, confidence, great. I think your suggestion coming back to it later the same day, not immediately because he's still angry. Yeah, that's a big deal. Um, all right, gang, we've gone plenty. I got some more questions I didn't quite get to, but I will eventually.
Yeah,
Is there something
I've
wrong?
got to scoot. No, I'm just thinking, let's save these. We can, yeah, we have them and we can answer them next time.
How did these come up? Where are they?
Well, I can't
Oh,
tell you on that on the
have a
computer.
podcast about perfectionistic children. Yeah, I probably need to do that. Maybe I'll teach on that next week, dealing with these lovely little perfectionists. Um, yeah. So yeah, I just skipped that one.
Okay.
And timers too. Timer
Yeah,
trick is a big deal.
timers.
All right, you have enough to think about. It's been great. Please pass this on to your friends. Post it, repost it on Facebook or somewhere. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. You get notifications, I hope. And we'll see you next Friday. Hope this helped.
Have a great